here we have the secondary mirror, and I've got the telescope there ready to have the secondary mirror fitted into its spider support. But there are various adjustments that we really need to do before that can be done. One of them is to look at the degree of offset here. If you have the ellipse in position, then the optic axis, the center of the whole caboodle, has got to be through that little circle there. If I'm using a laser collimator, the laser's got to hit that if it is adjusted properly. As you can see, I've got a huge offset here, possibly far too much. So the calculations suggest that it should be 18 millimeters from there to there. So you can see that's not nearly 18 millimeters. And if I get this out and measure it, I can see it's something like, about 23.5. So just over 18 is what I'm after. So if I squidge this down to about 18, okay, that's about what it's supposed to be. And what I could do is to mark a little line here and maybe just sort of put a little scratch. Can't really do that because the scratch you've got to... Okay, I think I can see it where I made that mark. I think I'll just check that again. If I make that 18 mil and look at it very, very carefully, and put a little dot with a pen there, and then check and see. Yeah, so that's roughly where it should be. So the adjustment for that, there's a screw attachment at the back here, so I can open that up and loosen that, put the back pen on top on, and then using the magnet invention, that's now something like lined up right. Okay, so that's just touching the little black dot like that. Okay, now the other side, the calculation says 6.62 if it's correct. So I'll adjust the calipers here to about 6.6, which will be that distance there, and by tucking it in, I can see that it's just about right. It might be a fraction of a millimeter off. So there we go. Now, the other thing is that we need to adjust the angle of this so that it's spot on. I've got to figure out a way of holding this, because ideally I need 3 hands, because I now want to position this template. Let's have a look. It's got to be that way around. It's got to be that way around. So I need to position this very carefully on top of the mirror. I've got little wings at the side which I can tape onto the side. So I need to just think of a method of supporting this where I don't have to risk dropping the whole thing on the floor. So we'll just pause there. Okay, I've got this little wooden block device which I used in previous operations to sort things out. So if we've got a little bit of tape handy, so I'll just get some sellotape. The age-old problem of finding where is the end. So I'll just stick a bit of that. Right, so I've got two little bits of tape there handy. I'm sure there's no grit, dirt on that. And let's have a look. Which way around does this go? Does it go that way or does it go that way? It's got to go this way. So if I very, very carefully place that there. Now these 4 black bits I've added so that when I get the mirror into the telescope, I'll have a nice perpendicular arrangement. I can see exactly what I'm trying to do, because when the ellipse is viewed in the telescope it looks like a circle, so you can't really tell whether it's rotated. So these should line up perpendicularly. So I'm just judging by eye now whether this outline is exactly over the mirror, and then with a little piece of tape here. Now you can't press down on that, so if I take that and very, very carefully press it on the side there, does that look all right? Could be. And then I have, no, I'm going to get a slightly bigger piece of tape. And then with this side, I will get that little wing sorted out. And see if I can hold that in position without touching the top surface of the mirror. I think that is lined up. The ellipse is certainly matching. The line of the ellipse is certainly spot on, so I can now just pull that downwards. Okay. Now, do I like it? Nope, I don't. It's moved off a little bit there. I think that's not too bad. You can see a bit of glass there, a little bit of glass there, but I think more or less that's okay. So what I'm now trying to do is to get that axis of the ellipse there absolutely right, because I don't want a couple of degrees of error. I want that to be lined up absolutely spot on. So those markers straightened out, and now the trick now is to consider getting that into the telescope. Okay, underneath here have this little circular collar with an Allen grub screw attached there, and that allows me to place this into the telescope very carefully so as I don't touch it against anything it did not to touch. So that goes in, and then is fed out like that. And there is another device, and I think I'm just going to let go of that. I'm pretty certain it won't move. But this one has got 3 little grub screws there, so I'm just making them sink in so they're below the surface. Okay, easy to put that way around, and then this goes on there. I think for this I might put the glove back on just in case I accidentally touch the mirror. That can get out of the way. And then we now have the ability to rotate this as much as we want in that direction. It can also be adjusted in and out, whichever way we like. If it's not right, then I change the grub screw on that bit. But how this will go now is I position these 3 holes here. These 3 holes have got to line up with the 3 screw holes there, so I try and get that right to start with, and also get the grub screw opening where I will be able to reach it, so I can get to it from here. So that's nice and snug. That can be placed in position. Then I'm pulling with this hand, I'm pulling backwards to get everything tight in that direction. Really it needs a third person, somebody to come and push this inwards and then turn the Allen key, but I think with a bit of fiddling, let's get it so it's almost ready to go. There we go. So if that is placed and I push that in tight and then rotate the grub screw. Okay, now it's not absolutely immovable, which is okay. It's designed to be like that. Later I'll tighten everything up very much tighter, but these 3 grub screws, 1, 2, 3, if I start to tighten those up, they will push the grub screws inwards, which will snug this up very tight, and I can crank that up really tight. When it's in the correct orientation, then I will know it is absolutely spot on. And then you tighten that one, and these 3 fairly severely, and then nothing is ever going to move. So the secret now is to have a look down here, and of course you can't see a thing because it's too dark. So here we have put this in there. It should produce enough light for me to see what's going on. Yep. Then I can and rotate. There we go. Now I don't know what you'll be able to see if I look down the focus, so maybe take that bit out. But if you look down the focuser now, you can see, with a bit of luck, that the ellipse should now look like a circle. And if those 4 black wings that stick out the side, they should be lined up with the veins, which you won't be able to see now because the paper stops obviously reflecting. I'm just going to lower that down there and see what you can see. I can't look at this at the same time. Right, I can now see it. So if I try and position this so that everything's concentric, there we go. It looks reasonably lined up. Obviously, if this was rotated a bit, here we are. You can see how I rotate that round. So rotating it backwards and forwards there. You can see how easy it is to adjust that to get it absolutely spot on. This is the CAD drawing I used. That's where I got that reading of 18 millimeters and 6 for the offset. If we zoom out, we can see how there our telescope works. The light comes down, hits the primary mirror, reflects back out, hits the 45-degree secondary, goes off to where the camera is mounted up here. So the reason for the offset is now, I think, clear, because to get a line intersecting all of these light rays to deflect them back upwards, this angle is the same as this angle, and if you then put a sloping 45-degree line here, obviously the distance from the dead center there to the end of the mirror there is going to be bigger than the distance from here to there. So it's about 5.23 millimeters offset, which is where I made that little black circle, just moved over. So that's the perfect center of the mirror, but the optic axis is going to be just up a little touch there. You probably can't see that too well. Let's zoom it up. Yeah, this is the center of the mirror, but the sweet spot is there, hence the required offset. Now, checking that, I decided that I'd like to check it even more. I have a laser leveler, which I use for DIY tasks. Very useful device. Projects an absolutely vertical laser beam and a horizontal beam. So I wanted to check that the orientation of the mirror was correct. So with this, you can see that I've got the laser is horizontal there quite nicely, and it is shining on the metal rod. So the metal rod is clearly at 90 degrees to the holder. Right, pop that secondary back in position. Tighten this up as best I can. It's still easily rotatable, but we now have, I'll just turn the whole thing around a little bit. There we go. Now we've got a laser collimator in place. So what we have to do is to see when the laser is switched on, the laser beam comes downwards, hits that sweet spot, and off it goes to the mirror. But the trick is, how do we see where it is? So the way we do that, I've got a little small secondary from an old telescope, which you can then hold into the scope, and by rotating it and reflecting you can see what is happening. So I haven't tried this yet, so it could be way off, but if I turn on the collimator, there we go. Yes, you can see that the laser beam is coming down, and then with this we have a little look and we can see that it's not quite right. It's actually aimed at the center of the mirror, so it's missing the sweet spot. So with a little bit of thought, I'm now going to figure out whether the secondary has got to get further into the telescope or whether it comes back out towards me here. The mirror, of course, changes things in all directions, so I think it's got to come backwards a bit. It's also missing off to the side, but that's not a critical thing. I've got a little bit of sideways adjustment that I can put in, so I think I'll just try moving it backwards a little bit and see if that has helped. Okay, well, I had the direction of that wrong. It actually had to go further in to the body of the telescope, but there I think we can see that it's reasonably good. It's a little bit off to the side. Yeah, it's a little bit off to the side. Now I can either do that by fiddling with the secondary, or you have got a little bit of adjustment in tilting the setup of the focuser. There's some little grub screws that you can use to just change the tilt of the focuser, because obviously the way this is bolted onto the telescope here, there's no absolutely guaranteed way of getting that perfectly lined up hunky-dory. So I think that's probably the easiest way to do it, because the orientation of the secondary is quite nice. I could offset it slightly to one side, but then I've got to fiddle around with the laser leveler that I did before, and all kinds of fiddling around. It gets a little bit silly. So the direction to and fro is correct, so that's probably good enough. I might now just have a little attempt to twiddle those. We'll turn the laser off, just done by rotating that outward several turns, and I just might have a little experiment there to see which way I think it should go. Right, I adjusted these grub screws and just tilted the focuser up a little bit. This won't be the same focus as the one I use with the camera, so I'll have to go through this procedure again, but there I've just nudged that up a little tiny bit, and if we then have a look with the mirror, that's not too bad. Okay, it's hitting the thing reasonably nicely, so I think I would be quite happy with that. It certainly can't be too far away. I've also just tightened these three up a little bit, not a lot, just to make sure there's less wobble. There, and the next step is to put the three adjusting bolts in, which are sitting over here. There we go. Now the reason why these three holes are made extra big, so that if necessary I can rotate around and it doesn't get in the way of those. So these I can now just finger tighten until they are about right. There we are. So those now, three of those will push up against the back of the nylon support, and with a screwdriver there you can tighten those up here, there and everywhere, just to give a little bit of flexibility. The whole secondary mirror will move, and then you, by twiddling those three, you then get the laser dot to hit the center of the mirror. Can't see it at the moment because we've got the laser, the piece of paper in the way, but there we go. You see that's still looking reasonably good like that. And if I was just get, yeah, those are nice, those are finger tight. It shouldn't move it away from the center spot to any marked extent. But there we go, that's looking reasonably good. So when I'm happy with that, I shall look down this with the eye and see if I'm happy with it. Obviously I can't film that and look down at the same time. And if that's nice, I then remove the piece of paper and see whether the laser is hitting the back mirror, the primary mirror, reasonably nicely. That will be a little job for later. Had another think about leveling up the focuser so that it hits the exact center of the secondary. Adjusting these little grub screws here to tilt the focuser worked reasonably well, but then I thought I prefer a different method. So I've got here various different thicknesses of brass that I bought over the years and never got round to using. But there was one thickness which I inserted. I can't do this with one hand, so I'll just put that down for a second. There we go. So inserting this little bit of brass, it actually was the right width or length, whichever way you want to look at that. And tucking that in there, and then tightening up the little bolts that fit inside there, which I will do now. There we are. That's the little shim in position. And if I now get the little secondary mirror there, which we use, turn the laser on and have a little look at what we've got, then it looks to me absolutely spot on. It's as near as damn it. Now the laser is so bright that this camera doesn't cope, and there's too much of a intensity to get a decent image, but I've taken an image with the camera where you can control exposure, and it looks quite good. So I think that will be a better method, because it makes this level here absolutely flat. I'll take this piece off, and then the camera has got its own bits of focus on it, and that'll go back on again. It means I do not have to adjust these leveling screws with the camera in position, because obviously that sometimes has to be done in an observatory. It's always very fiddly. So with this arrangement and that little brass shim, I know that that level there is correct. So if that base plate never moves, then any apparatus attached to the telescope should be nice. Just remember to turn the battery off there. The other day I left it on and flattened it. So there we are, another step forward. I have removed the template, and I don't know whether this will be picked up. I can hold the camera right inside the telescope. I don't know whether you'll see where it is, but I can see it. It's about sort of 2.5 inches below the center spot on the front of the mirror. So what we would have is, with these 3 adjustable screws here, that one will tend to push the mirror downwards. So clearly I don't want to do that one. These 2 together, this one will drive the spot that way, this one should drive it that way. So tightening those 2 together should raise the spot upwards. So I will now get a screwdriver and see whether that can be done. Right, I'm adjusting alternately the bottom ones here, and you can see it's bringing the dot up. Don't know whether that will be visible on the final image, because the GoPro camera, a very wide angle lens, but it's getting there. So up to the right, go to the other screw, up to the left, and the other one up to the right. Okay, there it seems to be good, but of course this one is completely loose, so those 2 are really tight. This one is loose, so we need to tighten the top one. All 3 need to be tight. So the top one, yeah, there we go, it moves the spot downwards. So bring it up with the bottom 2, and then get it slightly above and then downwards. So up and up. Okay, so it says vertically above. Okay, that should do it. I will come tighten this one up, and it's always a bit of trial and error, because each screw tends to upset the other ones. So that looks pretty good to me. So are all 3 tight? Could be. Probably like to just tighten all 3 of them a few more quarter turns each. So a little bit tighter. Because you don't want one of them working loose. That does look pretty neat to me. I have a suspicion that that will do. So the secondary is absolutely rock solid. These veins are a bit flexible. They're under quite tension. I always worry how much, as you tighten these up, you're going to be stretching this carbon fibre, and it is glued in to slots there, and I'm a bit nervous of tightening them up too much and it pulls out. It might be worth just having a check to see, are we still nice and perpendicular here. So it's a little card protractor. That looks pretty good. So there we go. That looks reasonably nice. Oh, just noticed that the primary is actually not too bad. Look at that. The primary is just a few millimeters away from accurate, which is quite a miracle. Promise you, I have not done anything to alter that. So what I might do is now just do what you do with this is you rotate this around. That's the wrong one. It's this one. You rotate that around so that you can go to the back of the telescope, and then you adjust. The red ones will push, so the idea is that you have the red ones loose, they can be several turns loose each, and then these with these cunning little finger grippers, let's have a little think. So the laser spot, if you can see it, is above the central hole. So I've arranged this so that at least one of these three is vertical, this one. So it looks like all I need to do is to twiddle that one, which I'll now have a go. That's the wrong way. There we go. So while rotating that one ever so slightly, if I hold that a bit closer, a bit more chance of seeing, and then that goes like that, down it goes to there. And I can go to one of the others. It needs to come in just a little bit over to the centre, and then that one down. Now you can hardly see it. I suspect you won't see it on the camera at all, but it's now going back up the very hole that it started from. So those three are now okay. There's a big spring around each of the bolts there. So we now take the red ones. Now if I tighten the red one too much, you can see it moves the spot, but then with a bit of luck we can tighten each red one in turn. Each one you touch, of course, moves the spot. So we go around 1, 2, 3, tightening each one up. There we go. It gets so you can't tighten any more with just the finger. Now that one's gone. Yeah, it's not quite right. Yeah, let's have a look at that. So, yeah, we can see it is going back through the hole. A little check. Are we still in position on this side? Yeah, that's still aiming right, so mission accomplished.